Maybe you can take your nose off that damn book and help around the house, she squealed. At least take out the damn trash. Sometimes it seems to me that you love books more than your wife. Jack sighed and thought, sometimes, dear wife, sometimes, and put the book down. Damn, woman, you are in rare form for a Saturday afternoon. I can usually get through a couple of chapters before you start screaming. He stood up from his chair, staring at the novel that had consumed him for the past 2 days. Good reading, he reflected. We must continue. As he entered the kitchen, he heard M, short for Emma, tinkering around the living room, moving furniture and everything else to clean the house. He winced at the roar and sound of breaking glass. And indeed, a piercing scream crashed into his skull. Oh, God! No! He knew better than to ask, rather than give her another reason to notice how indifferent he was. What happened, honey? Oh, Jack, my crystal flamingo slipped off the table and fell on the floor. It's broken to pieces, she exclaimed. She was kneeling on the tile floor, holding the largest remaining piece in her hands. Inwardly, he smiled. He hated this monster, but he knew that it meant a lot to M. David Preston, her boss, gave it to her at her last company banquet. Thinking about Preston, Jack frowned. He knew that Preston was always sniffing around M, always giving her gifts, like that damn crystal flamingo. Trying to sound as sincere as possible, Jack tried to calm his upset wife. I'm so sorry, baby. I know how much you liked it. Wasn't this a gift from Preston? You know, the one from Santorini, Greece. M nodded, holding most of the broken pieces in the kitchen towel. Sniffling, she said quietly, yes, that's how it was. But it's not a matter of expenses, but of mood. Preston remembered how much I loved flamingos. He always does it well. Is it going well? He asked a little too sternly. Emma turned and glared at her husband. He's good at what you seem to be lacking. He always knows what I like, she grumbled. Of course, he always knows what you like, Emma. He desperately wants to get you into bed. At that moment, Jack realized that he was in shit. Damn, it's too late now. Emma's eyes had narrowed so much that Jack could barely see those precious green irises. Her face an ugly shade of reddish yellow that almost blended in with her red hair. You jealous asshole. You never liked David. You never gave him a chance. You always believe the worst about people and think he's always trying to seduce me. Well, I'll say something right now, Mr. Jackson. It will be a long time before you find yourself in the same bed with me again. Damn long. Sleep in the guest room tonight. The rage that had been boiling inside him for a long time reared its ugly head, and Jack could not help smiling and laughing. He knew that this would only add fuel to the fire of the furnace known as Emma Marie Lee. Damn, I can't remember the last time. Damn, woman, you know, I'm thinking about the fact that we haven't had sex in maybe 2-3 months, and make love? Damn it. I don't think we've made love in the last 6 months. Maybe, hell, maybe someone else was the lucky recipient of your hidden affection. Now you definitely don't get anything from your loving husband, do you? And God knows I tried. Jack grinned and continued. Guest room? I don't think so, honey. As a great philosopher once remarked, if you don't want to sleep with your husband, then you can move into the guest room. Staring at her husband, Emma blinked, her face turning pale and quickly losing the red flush of anger. Her eyes widened, revealing those beautiful dark emerald eyes that Jack loved so much. A tear appeared in the corner of her right eye as she realized what her husband had just said. He had never spoken to her in this manner before, and she was shocked by his anger and indignation. Then the realization of what he had just accused her of hit her, and she jumped up, ran out of the room, and ran down the corridor. A few seconds later, Jack winced as he heard the bedroom door slam and wondered for a moment if locked herself out as she, damn it, why couldn't I just keep my big mouth shut? He thought about it. I see why, idiot. This has been going on for too long, he answered himself hoarsely. He soon calmed down enough to consider a very unpleasant thought. She didn't deny it. She doesn't refute accusations of treason. Suddenly his heart sank as he became worried, which meant there was no denial. Jack sat down and considered his next move. His wife was in the bedroom, no doubt crying eyes, and so he wondered what would happen next. At that moment, it occurred to him that his wife didn't actually say that she cheated on him. Jack stood up and walked down the corridor. He saw their bedroom door open and assumed she must have run to the guest room. However, that door is also open. But the door to the bedroom of Amelia, their eldest daughter, was closed. Walking quietly to the door, he listened and heard his wife sobbing. Knocking carefully, he said quietly, could we talk? Emma sniffed and muttered hesitantly, "Please leave me alone. I'll be fine. Just give me a few minutes." No matter how angry he was, it broke Jack's heart to hear her talk so sadly, so miserably. "Then it's okay. If and when you want to talk, tell me." There was no answer, and he turned to leave, and she continued to cry. "Crap," he muttered. It was about 6 in the evening when Emma went in search of her husband. She found him sitting next to his work desk in the garage with the door open and Jack observing his surroundings. She stood in the doorway and looked at her husband sitting there. He had that look that she knew so well. He was deep in his thoughts, and who knows where he was at that moment. She was afraid of the answer. "Jack?" She called almost in a whisper. Jack turned and looked at his wife, and a deep sadness washed over him like a big wave hitting the beach. He knew that he loved her more than anything in the world, and despite their problems, he cherished this woman. "Yes, Em? Can we talk now?" A lazy, crooked grin spread across his face, and he nodded. "Of course. Why not?" She couldn't help but smile at the man she'd married 21 years ago, just as handsome, but with a few wrinkles around his eyes and a little more gray at his temples. Jack's deep brown eyes were always mischievous, filled with humor and love. Oh, why couldn't he be more attentive to her needs like David, she thought. Thinking of David Preston, she blushed, feeling guilty. Jack noticed a guilty look flash across her face. Why should she feel guilty? He slowly rose from the stool and approached her. Emma noticed the change in his eyes and became nervous. Maybe now was not the right time for them to talk. "Well, let's get this over with," Jack said. He expected the worst. "Okay," she answered timidly. Together they walked out into the backyard where she sat on the couch-length indoor swing. Jack looked at her and asked, "Would you like some coffee?" Nodding, she smiled and replied, "Sounds good." He went inside, turned on the coffee maker and, waiting, carefully watched his wife sitting on the swing, slowly rocking back and forth. Looking at Em sitting on the swing, Jack thought about the girls. They both studied, Amelia following her mother's example at Berkeley, and Jackie studying at the University of Washington. Since the girls left home, things have become tense in the family. Jack was immersed in work, and Emma was also more focused on Preston and Sons, a prestigious law firm specializing in civil law and big business. Emma was the personal assistant to Douglas Emmett. Preston's son, David Preston. Tall, blonde with dark gray eyes, he had the confidence and predatory instincts to become a very successful civil lawyer. And Emma was his latest prey. Jack was sure of it. Even if Emma didn't believe it, he knew she could be so naive at times. Tensions grew between them as she became more and more immersed in her work, and Jack saw that his wife was growing distant every day. Jack poured coffee into 2 cups and took them outside, giving one to his wife. "Thank you," she whispered, taking the hot cup. "Anytime," he replied, and she looked at him for a moment before turning her gaze to the mass of purple, red, and orange bougainvillea growing along the back wall. Jack sat down on a stool next to the swing and waited. Sipping the hot black brew, he stared up at the sky, watching as a single stream left a wide white trail of steam across the vast blue sky, the only spot in its vastness. "Jack." "Yes. I'm sorry." Jack swallowed and looked into his coffee. a thin stream of steam rising from the dark brown liquid. "What are you talking about?" She closed her eyes and took a sip from her cup before answering his question. "For making you think I was cheating. I don't, well, not physically, I guess." "Not physically?" She turned and stared at her husband, looking into his deep brown eyes. "I never had sex with him, but I was with him." Jack didn't say anything, just watched as many expressions flashed across her face. She never knew how to hide her feelings. "He invited me to dinner several times. I accepted the last 2 requests. You were in Anchorage at the time. Do you remember those 3 weeks when you were gone?" Jack nodded. Coincidentally, it was 3 months ago when he noticed that there was a chill between them. He was sent to Alaska to check for possible oil leaks and increased toxicity in the Gulf, as well as for any environmental impacts. He always called her every day when he was away and could pinpoint the exact moment when she spoke differently on the phone. She seemed worried. There was a guilty note in her voice. "I remember. You sounded different on the phone, as if something was bothering you." "Yes, I felt guilty after that first time, and last week he invited me again. I knew I shouldn't have accepted his invitation, but I agreed." "But didn't you feel guilty after the second dinner? Did you have a good time? Was he what you imagined him to be? Was he better than your humble husband?" "Jack, stop it. Yes, I enjoyed the evening, and he was a gentleman the whole time. We were just talking." "Have we talked?" Emma paused and stared into her coffee cup. "Yes, we were just talking." She knew the next question. "About what?" "About everything. We talked about the law firm, about my future, about me, and about you. We talked about girls. What about you and me?" He wanted to know how things were between the two of us. "David told me that the firm was considering promoting me to the position of executive manager of the firm and wanted to know how good our family life was." "And what?" Emma turned away, looking up at the sky. "I told him that you and I need to solve some problems. I told him..." "Told him what, Emma?" "I told David that I think you believe that your job, your career, is more important to you than your family, more important than me." "I'll bet you 10-1, Emma. He suggested that I was probably having an affair, didn't he?" At first, she was going to deny that Preston said those exact words, but she nodded and said, "Yes, he said that. But please believe me, Jack. I didn't think about it for a second. I know that you will never have an affair. You will never cheat on me." He didn't say anything else. "Anything else?" There was irritation in his voice. Emma closed her eyes for a moment before continuing. "Yes, he asked me to accompany him on a business trip to Vancouver. You know what he wants, don't you, Emma? Jackson Lee, you always think the worst about people. He needs me to go with him to be his assistant during important negotiations. This is part of my new responsibilities as executive manager." Her face flushed with anger, something that had been common for Emma lately. "Okay, Emma, I understand. You had dinner with this man twice, and now he wants you to go with him for a long time." She looked down and quietly answered, 3 days. "So, what do you want from me, my blessing?" "I don't need your blessing, Jack, but I wanted you to understand that this is just business. I know I was wrong when I agreed to have dinner with him without telling you. That's why I'm telling you now." Jack just stared at Emma. She was very confident, that was for sure. Well, it's time to finish her off. "Okay, do it. Do whatever you want, Emma. Obviously, no matter what I think, it doesn't mean shit to you." "This is wrong. Let me finish. And yes, it's true. We've hardly been a loving couple for the past 6 months. I don't know why. Yes, I've been very busy with this latest project in Alaska, but before, you always understood me. Suddenly, everything changed, and not for the better. I found out that you've been on 2 dates. Oh, you're sorry for not telling me, but you obviously don't regret going on a date with that jerk. Great. That's the problem. You're going on your 3-day business trip. I think I could go out to dinner with a friend a few times myself. Maybe even take a business trip back to Alaska. I think Marie would like to finally get some field experience." Emma stared at her husband. "Marie? Yes, you remember Marie? She's the new environmental engineer we hired. You met her at the last picnic. Long blonde hair, blue eyes. Remember? Emma actually remembered. Marie was gorgeous and young, and she remembered how the girl went on and on about how much she had learned from Jack. You can't be serious. You're just saying this to make me jealous. So why would I do this? Obviously, I shouldn't be jealous of this jerk right now, right? No, of course not, she said a little too quickly. Damn him, she thought. All she wanted was to be alone and enjoy the attention of a man who knew how to treat a woman. She had no intention of doing anything other than having dinner with this man. But then Jack says exactly the same thing she said, and she feels the seeds of jealousy growing inside her. Well, fine, if that's how he wanted to play it out. Okay, do what you think is best, Jack. I'm leaving this Friday and will be back on Monday. Wow, that was a bit hasty, Emma. Not much advance notice. Huh? Can you do me a favor before you go on this business trip? What? Make sure you're up to date on birth control. I don't want to feed anyone's little mouth. And make him use a condom. You don't want to contract any diseases. Seething with anger, Emma finished her coffee and stood up. I better start packing my things. She smiled wryly. Jack didn't answer. He watched as his wife entered the house. Seething with anger, he remained outside. Without warning, he growled and threw his coffee cup at the wall, shattering the china into pieces. Damn this woman, he muttered under his breath. Thursday night was Arctic in the house. It didn't matter that it was the middle of summer with typical California weather, warm and windy, freezing between husband and wife. Jack and Emma barely spoke to each other. She was angry at her husband, and Jack acted like he didn't care, largely ignoring her and her feelings. Emma woke up early on Friday morning and immediately realized that she was alone. Usually she was always the first to wake up and make coffee, but this time Jack was not there. When she glanced at his side of the bed, she noticed that his blanket was up and his pillow was missing. An icy fear shot through her when she realized that Jack was awake in bed. Damn it, Jack, where are you? She muttered, throwing back the blanket and sliding off the mattress. While searching for her husband, she found his pillow on the bed in the guest room. Someone was clearly sleeping on the bed, but Jack was not in the room. She quickly entered the kitchen and found the coffee maker empty. Damn, you didn't even bother to make coffee? Jack? Jack! There was no answer, and she became worried. Returning to the bedroom, she noticed a half piece of paper on the dresser, leaning against their wedding photo. She grabbed the piece of paper and saw that it was written in her husband's handwriting. Emma, sorry, I won't be able to accompany you. I hope you enjoy your time with David Preston. I'm sure he will take good care of you. Better than me, you probably think. Well, I think you need that kind of attention. By the way, who besides David Preston spoke to you about this new position? Oh, and speaking of David, I have to admit, I almost confronted him about inviting a very married woman, my married woman, to dinner without her husband's knowledge. But I decided he wasn't the problem. The problem is you. It was your decision to accept both invitations. It was your choice not to tell me. And now you have decided to leave with him for 3 days. All he did was wave the carrot around. You took the bait. I'll be gone for a week, so I won't be home when you get back from your little interlude. I'll be in Valdez. Last-minute request from the company. Sorry for the short notice. If there is an emergency, call me on my cell phone. By the way, when I get back, we need to sit down and discuss who gets what. And what should I say to the girls? Have fun with Preston, Jackson, Nathan Lee. Oh, what an asshole, she screamed, crumpling up a piece of paper and throwing it at the wall. I'm just willing to bet he'll take Marie with him, she spat. Well, to hell with it. 2 can play this. She stopped mid-sentence. Sit down and see who gets what. What should I tell the girls? What the heck? She knew exactly what he meant. She plopped down on the bed and stared at the crumpled piece of paper. Tears began to flow as she realized Jack was telling her that it would all be over if she went with Preston. Then she thought of Marie and her husband, and her eyes narrowed and her brows furrowed. This won't happen, she thought. The plane slowly taxied to the VA aviation terminal. As soon as the plane stopped, Jack and Marie gathered their carry-on luggage and jumped out of the 12-seater plane. Half an hour later, they stood in the lobby of the Best Western Hotel. Marie stepped aside as Jack checked in at the front desk. When he returned, he handed her the key and grabbed her luggage. They entered the elevator and headed to their room. When Marie came out on her floor, Jack watched as she walked out, dragging her travel bag behind her. He wondered how she would behave tomorrow. They were to explore the waters of Port Valdez through the Valdez Channel, which flows into Prince William Sound, so it was going to be a long and eventful day. Later, sitting in a chair by the window of his hotel room, he looked out over the port of Valdez. "It's really beautiful here," he thought. An image appeared in his head. Emma looking at him with her green eyes. "Why?" he muttered. "Why would she do this?" "Marie, take the bucket. Make sure it's tied before you collect the samples." Marie Lazonde nodded and, biting her lower lip, lifted the heavy bucket from the swinging deck and shuffled to the railing, dragging the nylon rope behind her. "Ready?" She nodded, and Jack said, "Okay, go ahead." She threw the clear plastic bucket overboard, hearing a splash as it hit the surface of the churning sea. The bucket immediately disappeared under the waves, and she immediately grabbed the rope. With all her strength, she was able to pull the bucket to the surface, but ran into trouble while dragging the bucket along the hull. "Here, let me help you," Jack exclaimed, hugging the petite woman and pulling on the rope. With his help, she was able to pull the bucket onto the deck. "Good job, Marie. By the way, never be afraid to ask for help. Okay?" Nodding, she muttered, "Okay, Jack." A few hours later, they headed to the port, receiving dozens of water samples from the areas of Prince William Sound and the Narrows and, finally, Port Valdez. "How are you?" Jack asked, watching Marie rub her hands through her thick coat. "I'm fine. A little cold, probably." "Damn it, woman, I'm freezing too. I can only imagine how you cope." Marie smiled, her face almost completely hidden under a thick fur-lined hood. She sat on a bench in the wheelhouse, while Jack steered the 55-foot boat into the bay. He gazed at the shoreline of the strait as he steered the ship. Her bare cheeks flushed bright red as she inhaled the cold air. As she exhaled, she saw a vaporous mist of breath escape her lips. Jack looked back at her and said, "We'll be back at the hotel soon. Just think about enjoying a nice, hot spa experience." "Damn, I can't wait, Jack," she croaked. And she really couldn't wait. All she thought about was being with Jack Lee. She knew he was married, but at the moment she didn't care. Jack and Marie became close friends, and she knew that there were always problems between Jack and his wife. She noticed that he had been quiet for the past 3 weeks, not as happy and cheerful as he used to be. Then, suddenly, he had to travel to Alaska and survey the surrounding waters for oil leaks and toxicity levels. She was surprised when he asked if she wanted to do some field work, and she quickly jumped at the opportunity to accompany him. Maybe this was the time when she could finally crack his stone. Exterior. God knows she already tried, but he still didn't understand a single hint. A smile crossed her frozen lips as she thought, maybe today is that night. After securing the boat, they collected the samples and placed them in the laboratory before returning to the hotel. Returning, Mary and Jack entered the elevator, the doors closed, and they began to rise. "Jack? Yes, Marie? Am I attractive?" "What?" Taken by surprise, Jack could only stare at this magnificent creature. She wasn't just attractive, she was downright dangerous. Yes. Yes, you are very beautiful." "You are sure?" He saw the melancholy in those huge blue eyes. "Yes, Marie. You are a very beautiful girl. A beautiful young woman, in fact." She moved closer to him, her large parka unbuttoned, revealing her toned body beneath the thick sheath. "Do you find me attractive?" He knew where this would lead. He smiled to himself. If he weren't married, he would have done everything to have this incredible creature look up to him, but he was married and still loved Emma. "Marie, I find you extremely attractive and very dangerous for an old married man like me." I know things haven't been great between you and Emma lately, Jack. I want you to understand that I am here for you anytime, anywhere, any way you want. Jack, I really like you and find you very, very attractive. I'm not asking for any commitment. I just want you to know I'm here for you." With these words, she walked up to him, stood on tiptoes, and kissed him tenderly on the lips. The elevator stopped and the doors opened. Standing at the door, stopping the elevator from rising, she stared at him. She reached out and gently ran her fingers along his cheek, touching his 2-day stubble. After a couple of seconds, she said, "You know my room number." She stepped out of the doorway and let the elevator close, her passionate blue eyes remaining on him as the doors closed. "Oh my God," he gasped as the elevator continued to the next floor. Jack knew that Marie liked him, but not to that extent. "Damn," he thought. "I'm in trouble. I have at least 3 more days with this woman." Entering his room, he threw off his parka and pulled his woolen knitted shirt over his head. "Damn it, I should have known better," he cursed. He went into the bathroom and turned on the hot water. "Damn it, I should have taken a cold shower instead of a hot one," he muttered, as his little brain reared up, harder than it had in a long time. After undressing, he checked the water and stepped into the shower. He started with shampoo and then lathered the rest of his body. Suddenly, he realized that something was wrong. Another pair of hands grabbed him. "Oh, damn," he thought. "How the hell did she get here? Marie, I'm so sorry. I can't do this. I am happily married to—" He stopped in his tracks, turning to face her. "Marie, I don't think so, Buster. You are mine and will remain mine. Understand?" "Emma, how? I thought you were in Vancouver with Preston." He stared at her naked figure standing in front of him, his eyes following the water that ran down and around her stunning breasts. He looked into green eyes, eyes that sparkled with lust. "About." She pressed herself tightly against him. "There are some things more important than business travel, more important than fraudulent promotions. You were right about David Preston. We will talk about it later. I'm so sorry, Jackson Nathan Lee, my sweet husband. Can you ever forgive me for being so stupid? Since you understand the situation well, yes, I forgive you. If you can forgive me." "Forgive you for what, dear?" "For not thinking about us. Emma, you are the most important thing in my life, not my job. I didn't make it clear. My stubbornness prevented me from showing the love I have for my family, for my wife. Please forgive me." She looked into the big brown eyes and saw love and care in them. Smiling, she slowly knelt down. "Oh my God," he breathed. She didn't stop and didn't let him go. Finally, he couldn't hold it in any longer and screamed, "Emma, I wanted you to know that I am yours and only yours." He bent down and picked it up. Holding her tightly to him, he pressed his lips to hers, his tongue curling around hers. All he knew was that he loved this woman. After they dried themselves with a towel and continued their renewed love on the bed, there was a faint knock on the door. Jack knew who it was, and apparently his wife knew too. She smiled and whispered, "I'll just be there for a second." Grabbing her robe, she shuffled to the door and looked through the peephole. Marie took a shower and put on her sexiest braless outfit, wearing a bright red sleeveless tight pullover over a very short white skirt. She knew it was bold of her to go to his room, but the young girl had planned everything and knew that this was her big chance. She smiled as the door opened, but her eyes widened in shock as a beautiful red-haired woman peeked out from behind the door. "Marie, it's so nice to see you. I'm very sorry, but Jack is still unavailable. Understood?" Marie couldn't say anything. She nodded and stared at the gorgeous, red-haired woman with piercing green eyes. Smiling, Emma closed the door. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She realized how close she had been to losing the only man she had ever loved. After reading his note, she realized what she needed to do. She first called David Abrams, Jack's boss, and quickly arranged a flight to Valdez, Alaska. Next, she called Douglas Emmett Preston and asked about the position of executive director offered to her by his son David. Mr. Preston knew nothing about this. When she explained to Mr. Preston what David had told her, he became apologetic. He told her that she was a very valuable asset to the firm and he didn't want to lose her. However, she notified him of her decision to leave the company. Mr. Preston said he understood and promised to write her a glowing recommendation. She then decided she would wait before telling her husband about leaving Preston and Sons. Emma turned and walked back to the bed, her husband laying there just as she had left him. He watched her approach, a smile visible on his face as she lifted the robe from her shoulders, letting it fall to the floor at her feet. Climbing onto the bed, looking into his eyes, she whispered, "I love you, husband." He looked lovingly into her eyes and said quietly, "I love you, wife." Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.